Jeevan Sobrino. My name is Jeevan Sobrino Wheeler. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a city councilor here in Cambridge, and we're going to start off with a little video from the Black Response, one of the local organizations helping host the event, to give you a bit of background on them.
Welcome to the Black Response's bi-weekly community workshops and skills shares. These workshops will center marginalized community members to build our knowledge of abolitionist principles, practices, and non-carceral safety response strategies. We're building community capacity for collective care, mutual aid, and creating safe spaces that can grow public support for defunding the police and funding community safety alternatives. But you might be wondering, what is TBR?
The Black Response is an abolitionist research and advocacy organization that envisions and works towards building a world free of carceral and harmful responses. We seek to uplift the Black, brown, and otherwise marginalized communities in Cambridge and everywhere by working to unbundle and abolish policing, to fund the police to invest in communities, and support the building of alternatives to public safety and the development of community care initiatives. We operate as a type of nonprofit membership cooperative whereby TBR members, the core governance committee, make decisions about and for the programs and operations of the organization.
You might be wondering what abolition is. Abolition is the practice of dismantling and removing a system. When we say abolition, we seek to abolish the prison industrial complex. Prison industrial complex abolition is a political vision with the goal of eliminating imprisonment, policing, and surveillance, and creating lasting alternatives to punishment and imprisonment. The Black Response is an abolitionist organization. We operate with transformative justice principles.
Meanwhile, traditional justice models, like carceral systems, hand the problem over to the state and state experts, thinking of lawyers, judges, police, principals. Whereas carceral systems ask what law or rule has been broken, who broke it, and what is the punishment, a system of transformative justice might ask what harm has been done, who has been harmed, who is responsible for the repair, what needs to happen to repair the harm, and prevent future cycles of harm from continuing.
Are you interested in learning more about transformative justice, prison industrial complex abolition, or just want to keep in touch? Go to our website, theblackresponcecambridge.com, and sign up for our quarterly newsletters.
Oh, thank you. So tonight we're going to be talking about Shotspotter, and we're going to turn it over to Ed in a second to hear about the national context for Shotspotter and the research and organizing that's been going on to get it out of our communities. To give a little bit of context on how the technology is being used in Cambridge, Shotspotter is a series of microphones and alert technologies that are supposedly detecting gunshots and alerting the police to respond to them. We know it's only in use in one neighborhood in Cambridge, the Port, which is also the neighborhood that has some of the most public housing and Black and brown residents in the city. But even within that, we don't know exactly where it's deployed. We also know that it does not pick up every gunshot in the city because there are gunshots outside the radius of where ShotSpotter is deployed. And we also know that it picks up a lot of noises that are not gunshots and alerts those to police as well, and that it doesn't do a great job detecting what is and what is not a gunshot. But we're going to get a lot more into those details and sort of the accuracy and inaccuracy of the technology. And for that, I'm going to turn it over to Ed Vogel from the Stop ShotSpotter National Coalition.
Thank you for the introduction, and thanks to Black Response for hosting this tonight. Definitely honored to be here. Ed Vogel, he, him pronouns, with the National Stop ShotSpotter Coalition. I work at the Surveillance Resistance Lab, and I'm a member of Lucy Parsons Labs out of Chicago. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, kind of the specifics of what ShotSpotter is, hopefully do a little myth busting here. If somebody wants to throw up my slides, we can get started. Perfect. So what is ShotSpotter? ShotSpotter is a product from a company called Sound Thinking. And the company likes to say that ShotSpotter is this AI-enabled machine learning tech tool that has that is able to get police on the scene of gun violence faster because of the advancements in technology. That's what they like to say. That's their marketing pitch. Really, what we should know is that all ShotSpotter is, at the end of the day, is a set of microphones that are installed in communities where police want them installed. It is intended to, they claim it can detect gunfire. We'll talk a little bit more about this. There are a lot of questions as to whether or not it can, but again, it's a series of microphones. That's really all you need to know. There is some sort of machine learning component to it. There's not much transparency around what that is. We'll dive into that a little bit more. But again, I want to name that it's from a company called Sound Thinking. The company was originally called ShotSpotter, but a couple of years ago, or a little bit over a year ago, the company rebranded to be Sound Thinking after a lot of pressure from community organizations, from campaigns across the country. The National Stop ShotSpotter Coalition has folks from roughly 20 cities. And we've been able to, over the last several years, cancel contracts or prevent contracts in cities like Seattle, Portland, Dayton, Ohio, Durham, North Carolina, Buffalo, New York, hopefully Chicago. We shall see as we get to the end of the year. And then hopefully I'm hopeful for the work in Boston and Cambridge as well. So, but I really want to reiterate that this is a product from a company because we can't only focus on the fact that it's a product used by police or that it's a product from a company. We really need to think about the nexus of power between the state and between the corporation that enables something like ShotSpotter to be adopted and used, despite no evidence that this is actually something that can address gun violence. On my left side of the screen, on the left side of the screen, you will see an image of a beige box. That is what the top box there is what the ShotSpotter devices look like. They're pretty innocuous, they don't stand out, and they're usually sort of hidden on utility poles or on buildings. So you're not going to notice them necessarily. They're just going to be sort of discreetly placed, both on public property as well as on private property, which is something that we could talk more about. Next slide, please. Thank you. How does it work? How does a ShotSpotter alert work? So what happens is a loud sound goes off. The microphones pick it up. 3 microphones are supposed to pick it up. The software is supposed to the microphones in the software are supposed to triangulate the sound in order to detect where the sound came from. That sound is sent to the company's algorithm. That algorithm reviews the sound, and then if the algorithm determines that it is a gunshot or they're not sure if it's a gunshot, that sound is then sent to a person, a human, in either a sort of a call center in the Bay Area, or there's another call center in Washington, D.C. These call center staff basically just listen to loud sounds all day, and they determine if the sound that they are hearing is a gunshot. Their training into ShotSpotter's program, the training that they have, says to them what they are told as staff is that if they are in doubt, to send the sound to the local police department and indicate that it's a gunshot. So when in doubt, the human reviewers for Sound Thinking, for ShotSpotter, send alerts to police naming as many sort of sounds as possible as gunshots. All of this happens in roughly 60 seconds. And what occurs is that police are then dispatched to the location that ShotSpotter claims the gunfire came from. And since police are expecting sort of a firefight, they're expecting somebody with a gun, they're expecting gun violence, they come in with their gun drawn with the expectation that they may have to meet gunfire with gunfire. So the way in which police are dispatched in this potentially escalates violence in the situation. And this is something that we saw in Chicago, as when we launched our campaign to end Chicago's contract with Shotspotter in 2021, it was in response to the murder of a 13-year-old boy named Adam Toledo. I one more slide to go to. But Adam Toledo was murdered in response to a Shotspotter deployment where the officer was ready to shoot as soon as he saw Adam. He chased him down an alley. The last pieces I wanted to mention is that three points. One, the system has never been independently tested. Shotspotter claims they have a 97% accuracy rate. What is notable about that is what they're actually claiming when they say that. When you hear that, you probably assume that 97% of police deployment from a Shotspotter alert have some evidence of a gun crime, or somebody is arrested, or something to that effect. That 97% accuracy rate number has nothing to do with deployments. It's all about how the company calculates the sounds it hears. Since the microphones hear everything and record everything, they delete a lot of sounds, and their algorithm deletes a lot of sounds. So the calculation in Chicago for this 97% accuracy is that the microphones in Chicago heard over 2 million sounds, but through the algorithm and through the human reviewer, they were able to determine that there was roughly 43,000 sounds that were gunfire. So that's the way they calculate it. 97% has nothing to do with the deployments. It's all about the sounds. But of course, that also isn't accurate, because that doesn't take into account the number of police deployments that are sent where there's actually no evidence of a gun crime. And I know Julie is going to talk more about sort of some of that research out of Boston as well. So all ShotSpotter is, all we should be thinking of it as, is a tool that increases police power, but it's really just a data broker for police. All it does is collect sounds. It collects data points of when and where maybe there was gunfire. And the reason that is notable is because ShotSpotter has no ability to stop or prevent gun violence, right? All it does is collect sounds. So the company claims that it can help alleviate gun violence, but it can't do any of that. It has no impact whatsoever. All it does, again, is just collect sounds. But the other point about this too, the last point, ShotSpotter requires gun violence to continue to profit. Again, if we're thinking about the marriage between police agencies and the company, ShotSpotter, in order to maintain its contract with police, needs gun violence to continue. The company needs fear of gun violence to maintain its relationship and contract with cities across the country in order to maintain their profit and their revenue. If they were to actually end gun violence, or if gun violence were to end in Cambridge or Boston, then there would be no reason to have ShotSpotter around. So they need to keep ShotSpotter. They need gun violence to remain in order for ShotSpotter to remain in place. So that's just a quick overview of ShotSpotter. Happy to answer any questions. But I will be handing it off to the next speaker.
Thanks, Ed. We're going to go from the national level now to the state level to give some more context on how ShotSpotter is used in Massachusetts. And for that, we're going to turn it to Julie Lee, who is a technology for Liberty Fellow at the ACLU of Massachusetts. Julie's going to talk about the problems with ShotSpotter as a device and what the implications are for the communities that have it in use across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Nice. Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Let me just try to put up my slides. Okay, I can no longer see anyone. Okay, here, I can move. Now I can see people. Yeah, so if there are any questions, we'll be able to take them near the end because I can't really see the chat right now. But yeah, so thank you so much for the introduction and to the Black Response for putting on this event. At the Technology for Liberty program at the ACLU Massachusetts, we focus on issues at the intersection of technology and civil rights and civil liberties. So, for example, some other campaigns we've got going on are to ban the sale of cell phone location data in Massachusetts. So these are like targeting corporate actors, but also things like regulating the use of facial recognition by government agencies, including law enforcement agencies in Massachusetts. So we also do a lot about policing and surveillance technology. So part of that latter issue area is kind of how we got to Shotspotter. Obviously, it has been implemented in many different cities around the country. And so we put in a public records request a few years ago now, and we're able to obtain over 1,000 documents about the BPD, Boston Police Department's use of Shotspotter. So that would be some of the results I'll be sharing with you today. Okay. So until recently, the locations of Shotspotter microphones were a closely guarded secret. But this February, a Wired article actually revealed the leaked locations of these once hidden microphones, finding that there are over 25,000 of these actually across the US. And from this data set, we learned that Shotspotter is present in 13 Massachusetts cities that are listed here. And as you'll see, Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville highlighted because those are some of the cities that we have active work going on right now. ShotSpotter is almost exclusively deployed in communities of color, as has been alluded to earlier. In fact, the same Wired article found that across the US, nearly 3/4 of the neighborhoods that have ShotSpotter are majority comprised of residents of color. And this is incredibly apparent, this racial disparity in Boston, where we see that ShotSpotter is primarily in Dorchester and Roxbury, including neighborhoods that are over 90% Black or Latine. And so you can see here the darkness of the polygon is like how many, what the percentage of Black and brown residents are in that neighborhood, and the dots are the microphones that we retrieved from the Wired data set. So there's like almost a perfect match in between which areas have the most proportion of Black and brown residents and which areas have the microphones. So yeah, as I said, last year, the ACLU Massachusetts acquired over 1,300 police reports from a public records request to the Boston Police Department, detailing incidents involving ShotSpotter between 2020 and 2022, so a 2-year period. So this is an example of the kinds of data that we got. So it's like a police report on the left. And in particular, we analyzed the narratives, which are written, these are filled out by the police officers that, are dispatched to investigate what ShotSpotter tells them is a likely, shots fired incident. And looking at these narratives, we can then, analyze in the police officers' words the incidents in which they were just deployed and the outcomes of that deployment. So you can see here it says something like officers canvass the surrounding area to no avail. Multiple B3 units responded to the scene in the attempt to locate ballistics to no avail. So that would have been an example in which we would have taken this report and concluded there was no evidence of gunfire after the ShotSpotter alert. So when we analyze all these narratives, we found that almost 70% of the ShotSpotter alerts referenced in these reports resulted in no evidence found, where we had defined evidence as bullet casings, ballistic damage, witnesses, victims, etc. And even in cases where some kind of evidence was referenced, in many cases, we found that it was limited to bullet casings or sometimes ballistic damage, such as to a window or car. And these results were determined, as I said, by analyzing police reports, and you can read more about that at the link below, and there will also be a QR code at the end if you want to scan it to read more afterwards. We also found similar results, though, according to the BPD's own database of shots fired incidents, which are public and you can find on their website. If you just Google like BPD shots fired dashboard, and that's on the right. And the public dashboard includes actually a variable, a data point, or a column, data column, where the BPD has their own assessment actually of whether or not the shots fired incident of each incident resulted in any ballistics evidence. The dashboard doesn't distinguish between shots fired reports that were initiated by ShotSpotter alert as opposed to another call, such as a 911 call. However, we're able to cross-reference this data to the data that we had from the police reports. So narrowing the database, this huge database of all shots fired incidents in this 2-year period to only the ones involving ShotSpotter that we had in our reports, like the 1,300 or so. And when we did so, we found the BPD's own assessment of the same 1,300 plus incidents demonstrated that very similarly, almost 70% of the shots fired incidents associated with the ShotSpotter alert had no ballistics evidence or strong witness or officer corroboration in their words. Therefore, in this time period between 2020 and 2022, almost 70% of alerts, ShotSpotter alerts in which police officers actually went to the scene to investigate it, spending that officer time, all those resources, were apparently dead ends. And instead, in many of these cases, police found indications of alternative explanations for, the lack of evidence. So around 1 in 6 of all ShotSpotter alerts reference other noises that could potentially be explanations for the lack of evidence found. In these cases, police frequently found evidence of things like fireworks at a birthday party, backfiring dirt bikes, garbage trucks, a metal plate in the road, and so on. And in fact, 1 in 10 of all ShotSpotter alerts during this period reference fireworks as in addition to talking about the lack of evidence of gunfire. And this is not unique to Boston. We've kind of alluded to this campaigns happening all over the country, but even within Massachusetts, even though our most comprehensive analysis is what I presented to you just now, we have a little bit of information about its efficacy in other cities. I'm sure you'll hear a little bit about Cambridge after this. But besides that, in Pittsfield, Somerville, and Worcester, just as 3 examples, you can see that more than half of all alerts, in fact, over almost 2/3 or more in some cases, did not result in any evidence found either. So from coast to coast, investigations in the ShotSpotter across the country, from independent academic research to, like civil rights nonprofits to governmental audits, have all found similar results. And for instance, just like 1 or 2 weeks ago, the New York City Comptroller published an audit of ShotSpotter, their use by the NYPD, that analyzed 8 months of alerts, and they found that 87% of ShotSpotter alerts turned out to be also dead ends after the NYPD were dispatched to the scene. So yeah, that's the summary for the work that we've done so far on the use of ShotSpotter in Boston. I wanted to also quickly plug, and I can, after this, I guess, paste this link in the chat. But as I said, we also have this ongoing campaign to regulate the use of facial surveillance in Massachusetts. And this has been something that we've been trying to do for several years. It's, at this point, a no-brainer. There's been like a long commission that has been developed recommendations that have been adopted by other states. So we're really trying to get this past the finish line. So if you're able to, there's like a very quick form that you can send to urge your legislator to pass these commission recommendations at the state level. So yeah, that's it. So this is the link again to the blog post and you can also scan the QR code on the left. And if you want to sign up for like updates from the ACLU of Massachusetts, you can scan the QR code on the right, and I can also like paste the links in the chat after this. So yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I think next is probably Andy.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, moving now from the state level to the local level, we're going to go to Andy Suarez from the Black Response. Andy's a core member of TBR and has been leading the research against ShotSpotter in Cambridge to give some more context on how the technology is being used here in the city.
Hey, hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you to Julie and Ed they has been such a good partners in this research that we have done, that we've been doing here in Cambridge. But thank you so much for coming today. So as I say, my name is Andy. Use him pronouns. And today I'm gonna be, just adding our 2 little cents when it comes to ShotSpotter here in Cambridge. To be quite honest, there's not much to say because the narrative in Cambridge when it comes to ShotSpotter has been very repetitive in the last couple of years. Something that I can say definitely it's what has been said specifically. We have been checking on the last couple of years meeting, the meeting that have been happening for the Security Surveillance Committee. These are a couple of the questions that this committee asked to the CPD, and they go something like this. First question, or one of the first questions is like, has there ever been any complaints to the department about security, about surveillance technology like ShotSpotter? The answer to this question has, in the last couple of years, have always been none. Another question that they ask is that there has been any violations of the surveillance use policy found with these devices or these devices specifically. None. And one of the other questions that caught my attention was that this surveillance technology has been effective in achieving and identifying purpose. Before I tell you the answer to this, I want you to remember what Ed and Julie has been talking about in the last couple of minutes. And this is the answer, which has been a copy and paste in the last couple of years from the CPD, is that, yes, the technology has been effective in realizing the stated purpose. The technology has been very effective detecting gunshot activity and allow officers to more efficiently respond to the relevant crime scenes. The evidence derives from his technology has also been utilized to several new criminals investigations that year, and the technology has been particularly useful again in the past year. Incidents of gunfire relatively in shootings, leading to identification and persecution of perpetrators of crimes of violence. This specific answer has been copy and paste in the last couple of years. You just take that in consideration. And at the end, there's another question that actually caught my attention, was that is there any communities that disproportionately being impacted by this technology? And this answer is very, very nice too. So individuals who live, work, or otherwise located within the geographical area of the Microsoft or the sensors might be impacted by this technology. The placements of this microphone has not changed since the implementation of the technology. Initial placement has been based in prevalence of gunfire or gunshot victims. CPD can request movement, but the high concentration in this location has been persistent in the same area. So what did this very much entail us? Basically, there hasn't been no comeback from the community. According to the statements from the police, that nobody from the community has ever come forward to say that they complaining about this technology specifically, of course, because they have no idea that these technologies are around. Even if they know, they have no idea where they are. And even then, they have no idea how they work. And this is very much why we are here today, starting this campaign on educating the communities of Cambridge, or like Jiven said at the beginning, pretty much one community or one location here in Cambridge, predominantly. Something else that I can say about ShotSpotter, and this is very early a fact on Shotspotter. Basically, something that has been said from the previous police commissioner of Cambridge. Basically, he was informed that in the first 6 years of this technology being here in Cambridge, there has been a false positive 2 times, 2/3 of the time, every time that it's being used, the first 6 years, and the total cost, and this is total cost when it comes to deployment, sending police or SWAT team members to this, to the location of the activations, basically has been cost to the city at $325,000 to the city for the first 6 years. So imagine that. And there has only been 7 arrests attributed to this technology. That was just the first 6 years. And basically, we have the Shotspotter contract or Shotspotter devices here in Cambridge since 2014, around that time. I was just wanting to add that caveat there. So now I want to share my screen real quick. Just give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, I can see you guys from. Wait. 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. Hopefully you guys can see that. So, Shotspotter in Cambridge. What is the we as a Black Response trying to do here? Simple question. The Shotspotter is a tool of gentrification? Good question. So basically, the here in the Black Response in the coalition, basically we are trying to gather several progressive abolitionist organizations in the area. They're basically to develop a campaign to end the Cambridge contract with sound thinking for the use of these devices. To unify the most impacted community members, the issue that was most concerning to everyone was the housing and gentrification. This is usually the topics that turn more heads into the topic. This project innovation has been examined the impact of Shotspotter when it comes to the prices of the house in certain locations in Cambridge, or better say in one location in Cambridge. Why are we doing this? So the rationale of why we're doing this is pretty much that the primary goal, basically, for this research is that we are trying to provide a different method of analysis that for the already established, for example, Stop Shotspotter National Coalition campaign. Our focus here is to understand the impacts of Shotspotter dispatches on house prices in the municipality, with the aim of determining what degree there's a correlation between Shotspotter dispatches and house prices and the dispatches or the activations location. There has been many questions that has come from this research, and we are trying to answer in this research. But there's 2 specifically. They are the most pressing questions. First, we have it's very straightforward, which is what is the extent of correlation between Shotspotter dispatches and the house prices. And when it comes to house prices, we're talking about rental unit prices or house sale prices in this location specifically. The question number 2 will be, what is the factors that influence the relationship, if there's any, between Shotspotter and how the prices of the this location, houses, and identification in general. So I want to show you in the slide here a early model that we were using. This is not the model that we're using anymore, but I want to show this specifically because this is the more impacted one. Basically, in this early model of correlation that we were doing was a two cases that we were studying about the Shotspotter activations. We took this information from the notification that the CPD sent to every community member that is listed on the listserv. Basically, these are two cases specifically where Shotspotter was activated. This first case was in 2020, and as you can see, it was in the corner of Portland and Harbor Street, Portland Street and Harbor Street. The second case was on 2021, and this was in the corner of Harbor and Cherry Street. Basically, what we're doing is that we are taking information from house prices from 10 years ago all the way to 2020 and 2021, and from there all the way to 2024, for example. And we can see the fluctuation of the prices and how this has been affecting the shift in ethnicity, background of the area. But like I said, this is just an early model that we were using. We have been developing other models, but this is basically the basics of this intervention that we are trying to do. So that's basically it when it comes to what we are doing. We are trying our best efforts to go into the nitty-gritty of the information and trying to provide you with the most, the most fruitful information about this specific topic. Something that I want to add, and this is my next slide, it's a very similar map that Julie was showing, but this one shows a little bit about the Cambridge area where all these devices are. These are only the public devices that we know. We still have missing there many of the private locations which we don't know about, but that's the general area where most of the using the wireless information, we could position most of the devices location. And just to add a little bit of more visual information, we can see in the next slide how most of the devices that we've been able to locate here in Cambridge look like. I'm not going to be specific on where most of the locations, the devices that you see on your right. I can tell you that all of those are in Cambridge, but I will give you just the one on the left that you can see there. That one is actually on the top of the Cambridge Regional Latin School. It can be seen from certain point of the park right next to it. But I was just, want to show you a little bit of visual there, but I believe that is it for me. Now I will pass it back to Jivan.
Thanks, Andy. We're going to move now to the Q&A portion of the workshop. If you have questions, you can drop them in the chat, and Virginia is going to be collecting them. I'm going to start with a few questions that I had written down. The first one was that we saw in Julie's presentation that 70% of ShotSpotter alerts, police don't find any evidence of shots being fired. We know that in all those cases, it's a lot of other things being identified, from fireworks to potential gunshots. One of the arguments that's been made in favor of ShotSpotter has been that still means that 30% of cases are actual gunshots. And if it helps detect even one case of actual gunfire and gets police to respond faster, and that's a life-saving response, it's worth it. The city of Cambridge isn't the one actually paying for it. We're going to grant for this. It's not even city taxpayer dollars. Why wouldn't we use this if it's going to help respond to even one life-saving event? I would ask the presenters how you would respond to that, and I can turn over to anybody who wants to jump in there.
Well, I believe that I can say something there, and please, if you guys want to jump in, go ahead. So, um, you know, basically, as I said before, in my anecdote of like the first 6 years of Cambridge using, there's there's not only what you pay for these devices, the maintenance of the devices, and the contract itself, what you pay yearly. It's all about the every time that this device is activated and move a certain amount of CPD members or SWAT team, every time that this happens, and it's a false positive, which is two-thirds of the time, every time there is tax money expended right there. So technically, every time that they show and there's nothing to do, or every time that they show and there's just, a group of teenagers, every time that they go around and there's not only one patrol, it's 2, 3, 4, 5 patrols for a group of kids just in the corner there. The Shotspotter said that there was something happening that didn't happen. So technically, the city still is actually paying for this. Shotspotter, it does many things, and something that we always said in the coalition is that even if Shotspotter will actually work, that is something that is just not. It doesn't help the core problem of what Shotspotter, or many people say that Shotspotter wants to solve, which is like gun violence in general. It's not doing that. What it's doing, but I can tell you a couple of things, like exhausting the police budget every time that they have to go out doing nothing. It's just consuming officers' time, probably providing numbers where, we need more police because this isn't happening, but the numbers are not real. The numbers are not there to actually keep infusing money into this. The over policing of Black and Latinx neighborhood, that happens a lot as well. So it fuels the unconstitutional stop and frisk that lead to false arrest. So if people have the knowledge that this is basically the 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 giveaway of having this technology, I don't think that people will actually accept this technology. It's all about education. And when they don't know what they have, when they don't know the actual consequences of this type of technology, I believe that that's when, the actual response that we can have from community is.
Thanks, Andy. That's super helpful.
I can add a couple of things too, just to complement what Andy said. I think
Yeah.
the point about stop and frisk and arrests, one of the things that we talk about, what we highlight, is that ShotSpotter is a probable cause generator. It gives police the justification to stop someone, to frisk someone, in terms of what Andy said. That's all it is. It provides that veneer of coverage to do it. So we name it, we call it a probable cause generator. It manufactures criminality of people who most of the time haven't done anything, right? And of course, that's just on top of the conversation we can have about what Andy named, that even if it was a 100% accurate, we still wouldn't want it. The other thing I want to name is that in terms of the cost, ShotSpotter, like other police surveillance technologies, the companies, the users, and the police users of the technologies, what they describe ShotSpotter as, and other surveillance technologies as, force multipliers. What this means is this is intended to help them do their job, but it also is intended to bring in other surveillance technologies. So ShotSpotter is a gateway to adding more surveillance to Cambridge, because the intention is to actually build out a larger and significant surveillance apparatus where the ShotSpotter microphones are complemented by CCTV cameras, which then ALPRs, license plate readers, and then you add on there things like drones. And all of this gets merged into a real-time crime center that the Cambridge Police Department now has, and they're watching everything that's happening in Cambridge.
Thanks, Ed. One other question, and then maybe Virginia, if there's a question from the chat, feel free to jump them in too. But because the other one I would ask is, if Cambridge moves away from using ShotSpotter, broad question, but what should Cambridge and other cities be doing to address gun violence? It is a real issue in Cambridge. I think there was a report of gunshots fired in near Newtown Court last night. What are the tools that we know are actually effective and community centered that cities should be using to address gun violence?
Yeah, I can definitely tell on that, because this is a question that is very I mean, it's very obvious that people are going to have this question. Obviously, everybody wants to know, okay, so if we don't have the protection, what do we have? What should we do? First of all, the first thing that I want to let everybody that it's listening to this know, and this is something that I've been learning more and more in the last couple of months, is that the audio surveillance and any surveillance in general is something that we should not replace. That is not something that we should replace. It's something that we should eradicate, because surveillance is not security. That's one of the first things. But if I can say something, if we're talking about the root causes of the gun violence, let's say that. Let's talk about what are the root causes and how to attack before the actual gun is shot. Why is that is not a conversation, or why is this doesn't the cities and government doesn't pay attention to the conversation about poor education, right? Those are root causes of one of the root causes of gun violence. Properly funded schools, after schools programs, summer camps, childcare, housing instability. That is another one. Affordable housing, lack of good employment, free jobs, trainings, programs, and living stipends during the training programs, lack of affordable healthcare, right? there's a lot of discussion about that. Gun availability. You can literally get a gun anywhere, for even if you have a record. The gun trafficking, poor mental health. Invest in alternatives to the public health, that safety, they can provide safety programs to support people before, enduring, after crisis, right? And violence, misogyny, right? You can develop initiatives to address the culture of violence and offer conflict resolution services for domestic disputes. That is, the list goes on and on. But if we're talking about alternatives, something different that we can do, invest on the hundreds of organizations. They are already doing wealth, health and community community responses. For example, we have Heart here in Cambridge that's doing a great job. We can learn from the case of Janet Connors in Boston. There's another organization like Mother Demand in Action. There in Chicago, they have the violence interrupters. So these models of community safety that are addressing gun violence, and cities that can implement basically these cities need to face the truth, and having police run gun reduction programs that will not work. The people who punish the gun users cannot address the causes. Simple as that.
Thanks. And then one of the other arguments we sort of hear for ShotSpotter in Cambridge, or it's sort of a broader argument about Cambridge exceptionalism in general, especially when it comes to the police, is that, you know, we're different in Cambridge. Our police are better trained than they are in other places. Our police are not like the police in Chicago. We do not have to worry about the same concerns here. These are the arguments you hear, and that relates to ShotSpotter, and that even if, you know, the alerts that are going off are inaccurate, they're not for gunshots, it's deploying the police to the neighborhood. Our police are not, you know, behaving in these wild ways. They're not throwing people to the ground. They're not, you know, behaving in these racist fashion. Our police are better trained. They're more responsive, and so, you know, we don't have to worry about those same concerns of over policing and overreaction here that we do. And so the concerns about ShotSpotter leading to that, you know, it's just not relevant in the Cambridge context, supposedly, is the argument. Just want to put that out, you know, both local panelists in Cambridge, folks who are hearing these arguments in other places, you know, sort of hear the response to that.
We have a few
I-
questions from the chat.
Okay, perfect.
So-
So, but well, there's a couple of things that I can say about you know, that specifically in Cambridge, but I would like to, you've seen Ed in other cities, and you know about Chicago. So with smaller cities, and they probably have less problems or less, you know, inconvenience with the police, similar to Cambridge. Do you have anything to say on this specific?
I mean, I think you know, every city is sort of unique. Every city has its own relationship to its police department. But, you know, I think the systemic problems of policing are clear. What police do, what police are intended to do. So the violence of Chicago looks different from the violence of Cambridge in that respect, but that doesn't mean that the Cambridge police aren't violent. So I think that is just something that is sort of, you know, it's embedded within policing. So it's the nature of policing. I think but in terms of the way in which every campaign has negotiated this, it looks different on the ground and what the relationships are on the ground. I think I think there's a question around how to build power against police, because it does look very different in different areas. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of what comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, like, you might think about each police. You know, you can go past the uniform and think about each person has, you know, okay, not many people, not many police in Cambridge are reckless, or we haven't heard many recklessness from them. But it's usually not about the fact of who they are as a person. It's about what they represent. But taking that out of consideration, even when you see, like, in the city of Cambridge, you spend a bunch of money and on training for the police, they still receive far more training in gun use than the compassionate care. You know, city that prides itself as home of innovative institution, like, you know, Harvard, MIT, to ignore the data in third-party research on ShotSpotter. So much information that has been out there. So many cities that have already seen this, and not only the cities or the city councilors or anybody in the government itself, but police chiefs in other cities has already seen the problem in this on this device. And us here in Cambridge, we have such, and most of these institutions, and most of these cities, they usually quote universities, like on research, and of universities like MIT, and we pride ourselves to host this big institution, and we don't listen to this type of number, this type of, we just like want to go with what we believe. That's what's mind-boggling. Cambridge exceptionalism, it's not real, in my opinion. The Cambridge police are just as reckless as those in larger cities. After all, and SRO's gun went off inside of the. I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks ago there was one of the police in the high school actually discharged a gun inside of the high school. That was April, right? The Cambridge police murder of Aris Faisal. Everybody that lives in Cambridge remember about this, right? That was a police that we still don't know too much information about him because they are completely protecting him. So I believe that there is more than enough evidence out there that I don't think that we can pride and say that our police is not like any other Chicago or any other place police. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you. So I want to read one of the questions from the chat just so that we can make sure that they're addressed. So the question from chat is, are they also sending ambulances or EMTs when there's an alert, or just the police? Do you guys know about that?
They are most likely sending EMTs with, they're probably sending EMTs after the police give notification that there is a injury, that there's a victim. But the alert itself just goes to the police. It only dispatches the police.
Okay, thank you. So we have one more question. We have 2 more questions, actually. The next one is, are there examples of communities that have ditched the program, and what have we learned from those instances that we can bring to Cambridge as we think about building a campaign here?
You want to jump in that, Ed, too?
Sure. Yeah. So there's there've been multiple campaigns across the country that have been successful in terms of blocking or canceling their contracts. I think in terms of sort of the lessons learned in terms of their strategy and how they built their campaigns, very much base building, letting folks know, doing events like this, because I think once we make the problem of Shotspotter more legible, once we make it more clear to folks and we understand the problem, that helps us to cut through the lies of the company, the lies of the police. So that is, so it's a lot of base building, a lot of community education, a lot of political education, and a lot of work with and focused on, sort of budgets, very much a budget oriented campaign. I think there's a larger conversation to have around ways to think about other policies that could prevent ShotSpotter or ban ShotSpotter or whatnot that aren't budget focused. But that's, those are very much sort of city to city conversations, or city specific conversations, excuse me. And then other cities that have been successful in canceling or blocking, they've been, I think, able to, in some cases, shift funds in the way that Andy was describing, and putting funds and investing in different programs that are actually focused on creating safety in communities in a way that ShotSpotter can never do. So violence interruption programs, after school programs, job programs, all of the things that Andy named already. So I think the model that Cambridge has, the campaign that is being designed by Andy and the folks here is it's not too different from other cities. And I think I think it will be effective because, again, once the spotlight's on ShotSpotter, it's pretty clear that this is not a technology that anyone should be using.
Thank you. We have one last question for you, for Tibin. It is a very long question. I don't know if you've seen it in the chat.
Yeah, I think the sort of long and short of it is, are you willing to force a vote on ending ShotSpotter when the time comes? I think the thing I would say there is I do not think Cambridge should be using ShotSpotter for all the reasons that folks outlined on this call. I want to work to getting Cambridge to stop using it, and I'm really glad to see campaigns in Somerville and other places to do away from that. I think forcing a vote on it is one particular tactic. I guess I'd use the example of another piece. Cambridge having an elected mayor. That is something I very much believe, that I don't think our current form of government with an elected city manager makes a lot of sense. I think residents should be able to choose the mayor like they do in Somerville or Boston. I think there's a couple other folks on the council who think the same way. That's not a thing we've forced to vote on yet because we don't think there is support on it on the council yet, and don't think there's enough to gain on it. I would say the ShotSpotter, it's similar. It's figuring out what tactics make the most sense to get it out of the city, and I'm committed to working with folks on this call and else to figure out how we do that.
Thank you. That was all the questions I could gather from the chat. So I will pass it on to you guys to continue with any other questions that you have. Thank you.
Well, I think one thing that I have been hearing and reading in some of like the articles, from the words of sound thinking is that that people in these neighborhoods want ShotSpotter, they want surveillance. And so, as someone who does live in Cambridge in these areas, I wonder, Andy, if you had a response to any of that.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, just that like sound thinking, their spokespeople are always like referencing the fact that supposedly these communities, do want more surveillance, they do want ShotSpotter, etc. So I'm like, as a community member yourself, I was curious if you had a response to that.
Oh, I have so much of a response. In the last, in the last couple of, I will say year, in the last couple of months, that I've been digging into the ShotSpotter, all the ShotSpotter research and everything that it's out there. I've been obviously, starstruck on like how much information there is and how it's that people can't see how these things work and why they are so detrimental to our existence. And not only that, the potential civil rights violation that they bring to our neighborhoods. But something that has been very, very noticeable for me is that every time that I have had any conversation with anybody, scholars, PhD students, professors, community members, regular folks that have not higher education, everybody has the same basic questions. And those questions, they actually are similar to the what the research out there about ShotSpotter is saying that it's doing wrong. Like, how is that this microphones can actually identify a gunshot? And the only thing that I can always answer is like, exactly. So in every single one, I haven't even talking about people like they don't live in United States. Well, just plotting on the fact that ShotSpotter something it has contracts in other places rather than not only in United States, but people that have no idea. It's mind-boggling. Nobody has ever come back and be like, oh my God, but like that is actually very clever. Instead of receiving a 911 call, they can hear it and they can send the police and the police presence. But this is not the type of police presence that people want, but they understand the concept in general. To answer the question, I guess that is all about education. When people know and understand how this technology, how this invasive technology is working, and not only that, and this is the information that we we don't have 100% of like where the location of the devices are when it comes to private locations. When somebody said like right there, oh my God, is that a microphone there that can probably be listening to me 24/7? Oh my God. So like this basically is all about educating the community, and this is one of that will be one of the main campaign strategies that we're gonna implement when the time comes here in Cambridge. Education. So it is.
I want to add one thing about how insidious the company is. Cambridge is also using another sound thinking product called Crime Tracer, which is the largest database of law enforcement data in the country, formerly known as CopLink X. It's also, I believe, funded through the same monies as ShotSpotter is. So it's the company is, its tentacles are in Cambridge, and is sort of building itself into and trying its best to sort of maintain itself as part of the policing apparatus there.
Yeah, I can also answer Stephanie's helpful softball question about Somerville, which was that yeah, I think good reminder to mention it. So yes, obviously Somerville also has Shotspotter, and has had it for as long as Cambridge, which has been 10 years. Someone's still coming in. And we have had a city councilor who has been championing this issue of ending ShotSpotter in Somerville at the Somerville City Council level, Councilor Willie Burning Jr. And we are also hoping and have been doing a lot of work to do like education and community, organization, relationship building, and we'll be ramping up that hopefully soon. And the Somerville contract is up in January, so there's a lot of opportunity to plug in if you're interested. You can, DM me, I guess, if you live in Somerville. I have connections in Somerville. We would love to have more people involved. And I know that there are a couple of people in this call that I've, had met through some of that work. So yeah.
I saw another question about the grant that ShotSpotter comes from. I can talk a little bit about Cambridge, and then maybe someone else has some of the national context around this. Cambridge gets funding for ShotSpotter through a federal grant from the Department of Homeland Security, I believe. I think it's called the Urban Area Security Initiative, distributed through the Boston Emergency Management Department. The Crimson did a good report on this a few years ago. I'm going to drop the link to that in the chat. But all that to say, through the federal government, through Department of Homeland Security, which was created after 9/11, there might be some more context somebody else could add.
Yeah, I can share that these UASI grants, as they're known, are a common funding stream across the country for ShotSpotter and other surveillance. And this is also a strategy that the company has. They, as well as other police surveillance companies, they actively work with police agencies to identify funding opportunities, and in a lot of cases do the grant writing for them so that they can get the money to pay for the contracts. And then what is the situation in Boston and Cambridge and sort of the use of UASI funds for this is a little bit of an outlier. What happens elsewhere is that usually once the grant funds are spent, the monies for ShotSpotter and other technologies move into sort of like the city's budget, building out the police budget. And then if the department is able to get other UASI funds, they use those for other needs. So there's a pattern here. This is what the company does. All of these companies do the same thing. And it's it's very much a project from the federal government that is supported by both parties. One of the biggest advocates for ShotSpotter over the last several years has been Joe Biden in his White House. He has been put out numerous statements in support of gunshot detection technology. So this is not strictly something that is coming from Republicans, but it's very much a bipartisan effort.
Yeah, and to jump in also, like, this DHS grant, which is, as I said, for quote unquote counterterrorism, has a very, very narrow set of things that cities can use it for, which is obviously very unfortunate if we want to be diverting these funds for programs that actually address the root causes of gun violence. I think on that note, I just want, like, I've been thinking of this, well, we have to question, like, why are cities forced to spend this money? And why can't they spend this money on literally anything else that isn't like a surveillance technology? So I think we want to like interrogate, like, why do we have to be spending this money? Why can't we just not spend it? Or why can't the government just, allow this funding to be used for purposes that are actually benefiting the communities? So.
ShotSpotter has expanded under the Biden administration in terms of federal grants. That's a good question. I don't necessarily have the specifics in terms of dollars, but I assume so. Again, the Biden administration has put out numerous statements in support of gunshot detection technology as a useful tool for addressing gun violence across the country. The other thing I'll note is that that ShotSpotter recently moved into South America, and in the sort of press conference in Uruguay where they had launched ShotSpotter, the State Department had an official presence at this event where they introduced ShotSpotter there. So it does feel like there is some orchestration happening on close relationships between the Biden administration and the company.
Yeah, and also just one more thing, I guess, on the UAC grants. Like, there are many things that it funds all in the same family of like surveillance technology, or at least some of them have been described. But as I put in the chat, like BRIC, which is the Boston Regional Intelligence Center, is like kind of like a data sharing center and a lot of other things in Boston. It maintains the Boston Gang database, which we've been also working on data from that, and hopefully it'll be out pretty soon. And Muslim Justice League has done a lot of work on this as well as ShotSpotter, I should add. And yeah, and then in terms of BRIC overall, like, actually I was just in a talk yesterday where someone mentioned like being at the BRIC like analysis building, and there's just like tons of analysts that like are like employed there, paid like 5-6 figure salaries from this money. And among other things, besides like maintenance of the database and the many other data sharing situations that they manage with law enforcement, they also big thing recently has been social media surveillance that they do by BRIC. So like they'll be monitoring, and MGL has done good work on this, like keywords that supposedly flag people for terrorism that are actually like very common words associated with like Arab and Muslim communities that are, like someone will tweet something. So, this the kind of apparatus that is funded by this grant system is, yeah, like there are many different examples of it in the Boston area.
So another question around First Amendment violation rates. Julie or someone else just wants to talk about if there's any case law around this. Have there been lawsuits around ShotSpotter?
Maybe Ed can talk about the lawsuit against ShotSpotter since yeah.
Yeah, in terms of a First Amendment violation, there's only, from what I'm aware of, there's only been one instance where data around ShotSpotter recording voices has made it to court. And that was in Oakland in 2014, I believe. I think the company has been very particular and intentional about preventing sort of any of that from any recordings of voices and anything beyond gunshots from making it to the public domain. But it does have that capability. And we should be aware of that. So it's just a question of when and how that gets used. I will say, related to the use of ShotSpotter as evidence, tied to that, in Chicago, I can speak to Chicago, the prosecutor's office in Chicago is dropping cases where ShotSpotter evidence is some of the primary evidence in the case. And this is a pattern that's been happening now for a while. I published a story on this with someone else in Chicago, in Chicago Outlet, a little bit more than a year ago. And when we published this, ShotSpotter threatened to sue the outlet if they didn't retract the story. So now the story is retracted. I am happy to share the story so folks can see it. Yeah, ShotSpotter it has on retainer, forget the name of the law firm, but the law firm that won the like $1 billion or nearly $1 billion from Fox News a couple years ago. So they are definitely willing to put money into protecting themselves and using the full force of the law to do so. So, but then in terms of what Julia was referencing, there is a lawsuit that Lucy Parsons Labs, that I'm a member of, that we have, that I'm a plaintiff on against the city of Chicago and the city's use of ShotSpotter. There are 3 other plaintiffs involved, but claiming that, you know, the city's deployment of ShotSpotter is racist, more or less. So I'm happy to share that information and, you know, our complaint and whatnot if anyone is interested in seeing it. So that's also another strategy. I know that there is a law firm on the call that might be helpful with something like that. Maybe not a law firm. There's an organization that employs lawyers on the call that may be helpful with something like that, but not to, tell anyone what to do.
I think we've got time for one more question. I see one in the chat. Is ShotSpotter and SoundThinking, which the provider, is it the primary company for audio surveillance? And are there any competitors, similar private surveillance tech? Because is this sort of a monopoly here? Someone wants to speak to that?
ShotSpotter has most of the contracts across the country as it relates to gunshot audio detection. There are other products that have come out from other companies, like Flock Safety is a growing police surveillance company. They have a product called Raven. They have all these bird analogies for their products. Raven is even worse than ShotSpotter in terms of accuracy, which is kind of wild. But there's also then other tools that are there, and there are smaller companies as well that are trying to gain traction in other cities that have been used in like Philadelphia and whatnot. There's also other technologies that are being introduced that are visual gun detection, visual technologies, where something like Zero Eyes is one company, Evolve is another company, where guns are detected visually. So that's another way, another approach. And then the last thing I guess I'll say is that there's also, and this is notable about ShotSpotter, is that there's also a few companies that have gunshot detection tools that are meant to be for indoor usage. ShotSpotter, one thing to note, is only outdoor. It cannot detect anything that is fired within a building or in a car, which also matters when we're talking about when gun violence does happen. Can ShotSpotter actually detect a shooting that comes from a drive-by kind of thing? So, yeah.
Thanks, Ed. I think we're gonna start wrapping up. This has been great. There is a survey in the chat that Virginia just dropped in that folks can complete. There's is a follow-up event planned for the fall. There isn't a date or details for that yet, but folks will hear about it. Thank you to the presenters, Andy and Julia and Ed, and the folks who made this all happen, Stephanie, Virginia, everyone else. Thanks for everyone to coming. Don't know if anybody from Black Response or else wants to say a couple final words, but thank you all again.
Yeah, I just want to say from the part of the Black Response that this is just starting here. In Cambridge, we are in the very early stages of the research, but you're gonna keep listening more and more about ShotSpotter from us. We have a couple of plans to do this year, and we definitely next year are going to be trying to culminate the process of research and going into the campaign process. So look out for the next couple of weeks. Around October, we're going to be coming back with more information and a different perspective of ShotSpotter and what's happening not only in Cambridge, but in Massachusetts in general. But yeah, go ahead and please fill up that survey. That will let us know if we have done a good job today in informing you and what else that we can do to keep informing you in the future.
Thanks,
So
everyone.
everybody, have a good night.
So.
Oh, yeah.